Assassin's Creed's modern day has been a subject of contention since the series began, all the way to the most recent entries. The modern day acts as the glue of the series, creating an overarching narrative when implemented properly. In this video, I aim to separate the good from the utter dross with a ranking of all the modern days from AC1 to Mirage. There will be spoilers for the Assassin's Creed series from AC1 to Mirage, and a couple of commonly known comic book spoilers about the modern day in this video. With that said, let's begin. So starting off my S tier, which is not a good tier in my vids. S stands for something else. Mirage's modern day is just one cutscene right at the start of the game, with the strangest sounding William Miles to date.
You asked me once about this memory.
Yep, William Miles has a new voice actor every other game, and it's jarring how bad this one is. Maybe it's supposed to be William Miles doing an Iraqi accent due to the bleeding effect after reliving Bassam's memories. There was potential for a more personal modern day story, making William Miles a fully fledged character again, instead of just a cameo merchant. So Mirage, you're last until Shadows comes out. Unity is my next pick, because simply the modern day is a couple of cutscenes and voiceovers from Bishop. I know it's everyone's favourite character, okay, leave me alone. And to make things worse, the whole reason for reliving Arno's memories was to find the remains of a sage and the Sword of Eden, both of which were damaged goods in 1794. Just like Arno, after Elise's death and no longer getting weekly shipments of her bathwater. What a simp. So basically, there was no point in reliving Arno's memories, apart from watch 3 father figures die, and watch and learn from the first simp to actually lay some baguette. Now, moving on to Syndicate, which has pretty much the same format as Unity, but turns out the piece of Eden they're looking for is still around in the present day. Unfortunately, the obnoxious tone of Syndicate rubs off on the modern day assassins when Sean is talking about Desmond's death and how it affected him. He's interrupted by Galena. So yeah, a guy that's trying to process his friend's death is comedically interrupted. Great writing. So basically, this is very slightly better than Unity and the final appearance of Juno before she's killed in a comic book. No more comic book spoilers for the remainder of the video. Assassin's Creed Odyssey's modern day was set 1 year after the events of Assassin's Creed Origins' modern day, so Layla had double the time to experience the bleeding effect than Desmond did, but somehow she became less interesting and tonally all over the place. Reliving memories through the Spear of Leonidas was bad enough, and the Hawk Tua on canon.
Hey, you're actually fucking annoying!
Meeting the Eagle Bearer in person just shows a complete lack of understanding of what Assassin's Creed is, and created a walking talking contradiction as shown in my previous videos. They destroyed continuity just for a brief generic convo. Oh, there must be balance. Malaka! Doesn't seem like a compelling trade-off. Then of course, the Fate of Atlantis DLC ended up completely obliterating Layla as a viable protagonist going forward, summarized in one awful, tonally all over the place cutscene, which is unironically one of the funniest scenes in the entire series. So I'm glad it exists. That's why it's this high on the list.
Let go! It's not worth it! This is for your own... Get up, Victoria!
Assassin's Creed Rogue's modern day was an odd one. Most of the files you find were about assassins converting to the Templars or simply no longer believing in the Assassin's Creed. There was no piece of Eden or another Isu artifact Abstergo were looking for, not even the Isu tectonic power plants Shay found. They simply wanted Shay to be the poster boy of converting to the Templars. It's a pretty random modern day, with the final act sending a video of Shay killing assassins in the 18th century to the modern day assassins, while also hacking the assassins. Bizarre, random, and a bit goofy to simply sum it up. Moving on from the S tier, we're now at the mid tier of Assassin's Creed Modern Days. The tier of Modern Days that are bearable, basically. Not much to complain about and get the job done. So we start with Origins. Origins introduced Layla as the first third-person protagonist since Desmond in Assassin's Creed 3. It was quite a safe modern day looking back, but because of how long it was between having a protagonist in the modern day, that wasn't called numbskull or initiate, fans would take whatever scraps of structure Ubisoft handed out. You're basically just in a cave for most of it, a laptop with some semi-interesting files, no in-person team for Layla to interact with, until William Miles comes along at the end of the game, making one of his notorious cameos as the cameo merchant of the series. A little action segment when Abstergo sent agents to kill Layla with bows in the 21st century. Yeah, that's normal, right? Layla is enlightened about the Assassin and Templar conflict. It's just done nowhere near the level of depth and intrigue as Desmond in Assassin's Creed 1, which came out a decade before. Black Flag's Modern Day acted as an epilogue to Desmond's story, and also setting up the future of the series. It was the most critiqued Modern Day when it came out, but a few that are much worse have come out since its release in my opinion. It set up the method Juno would use to come back and delved more into the sages that were briefly mentioned in Assassin's Creed 3. I think Black Flag's Modern Day was definitely not great, but was competent and offered some cool details and Easter eggs for fans to gobble up. Not in that way, but... and didn't take up too much of your time if you wanted to stay in the Animus. Obviously, with the Juno storyline going nowhere, in retrospect, any modern day between Black Flag and Syndicate did not age well, and that's why Black Flag shall remain in 7th for now. After the Abomination, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I think most fans were worried about what was going to happen in the next installment. Now, Valhalla's main story was written by Darby McDevitt, who has been a writer for the franchise since the earliest games. The main thing I feel Darby did well was make connections to previous games that were well overdue, and giving them closure, like there finally being an Adam and Eve, which was set up in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and even making Odyssey's abysmal characters either more empathetic or interesting. Wondering what they might get up to next in the series, Valhalla had a good balanced modern day, wrapping up some previous storylines and setting up new ones. There was quite a lot to explore if you were interested. On the laptop, there were some Desmond audio logs that allowed Darby to make connections and some things canon. Also, it acted as foreshadowing for Desmond losing his personality, which is heavily implied when meeting the reader later in the game. If you were not interested in any of that, you could just hop back into the Animus and raid some shit with the boys. The mystery of how Eivor's body ended up in America acted as a hook for the story, which you probably forget about with the length of the playthrough before it became relevant again. The mysterious nature of the story worked well for a first playthrough, but during the next playthrough it would not hold up due to you knowing it's leading to Basim becoming a furry in the modern day. Layla's death just kinda happened, and with her death it's caused turbulence once again with what the modern day is trying to do, and with Mirage just having one cutscene, it kinda feels they're not even trying to trick fans into thinking there's an overarching narrative anymore. This will definitely be the case if Basim just disappears. Valhalla gives closure for older fans of the series, or can be explored further in future games. We have made it to the top tier of the modern day, and we begin with AC1. Assassin's Creed 1 started off the franchise strong, and the modern day was enough to intrigue players, especially with the ending. For the most part, it's just stuff being explained to Desmond, like what the Animus does, etc. The conversations that Desmond has with Warren and Lucy are insightful, though shrouded in mystery in some cases. They pose many intriguing questions that enlighten Desmond, allowing him to think outside the box and begin to question everything. If it's mainstream history or what he was told as a child, reality has been flipped and Desmond is enlightened to the secret ancient conflict of the Assassins and Templars. There are some emails and conversations you can access throughout the modern day, which gives you some stuff to do as Desmond.
Wow.
I would say Assassin's Creed 1 established Abstergo as a force to be reckoned with, as the assassins trying to save Desmond get slaughtered early in the game and it feels there's no escape for Desmond. Abstergo become less of a threat throughout the rest of the series, and in multiple games there's not a single run-in with them. So you have to give AC1 props for making the antagonistic force of the modern day feel unstoppable. What AC1 did better than any other Assassin's Creed in the series was a clear symbiosis between past and present characters that enhanced the overall narrative. Two characters separated by centuries joined together in symbiosis to explore similar themes, trials, and go on an almost one-to-one journey with many parallels. Both characters seek the truth, to uncover the mystery that surrounds them, to escape the dogmatic order they currently begrudgingly serve. Desmond's struggle carries on to later installments, while that chapter of Altair's life ends in AC1. AC1 handles the symbiosis between modern and past sections of the game the best in the series from a gameplay and narrative point of view, but suffers from its genius presentation, lacking content in the modern day, so 5th place it shall remain for now. Assassin's Creed 2's modern day followed the trajectory Assassin's Creed 1 set. Getting Desmond out of the Abstergo building was a great set piece to start the game off. And then meeting Sean and Rebecca, who have become staples of the modern day, acted as a welcome addition to those segments. I think Assassin's Creed 2's modern day added quite a lot to the series. If it's an in-world reason for character biographies to be made by Sean, or having more freedom with the Animus thanks to Rebecca, further exploring the bleeding effect, the Assassin-Templar conflict still happening in the present day, the truth content, which I consider modern day missions since they were fragments left behind by Subject 16 in the Animus, on the PS2 memory card Lucy collected at the start of the game, and another great WTF ending. But at the end of the day, you're still, for the most part, just in a warehouse, waiting to use these new skills in the world, so that's why I'm ranking it 4th. For me, Assassin's Creed Revelations is probably the most underrated Assassin's Creed game in the entire series, and I think the modern day in the game was great for multiple reasons. Desmond is in a coma, and most of the modern day is centered around him getting out of the coma. This game really fleshes out Desmond's backstory and sets him up as the main character of the series. Obviously, you have probably the greatest ending cutscene of the series, but Revelations has its faults. It lacks gameplay like AC3 and Brotherhood. I'm not dissing the first person missions in Revelations, as I feel they build Desmond's backstory up a lot, but obviously comparing the gameplay to previous and future installments of the series, Revelations is maybe lacking a little. The Clay Kazmarek DLC once again greatly fleshed out the modern day and created a clear timeline of events. Going into Clay's broken mind was also quite the trip. So overall, Revelations acted as an informative, essential modern day, which made Desmond's payoff in AC3 somewhat satisfactory. I mean, without the groundwork done in this game, I don't think there would be as much investment in AC3's modern day, and that's why it's excellent. Now, this is probably where I'll get the most backlash for putting Assassin's Creed 3's modern day in 2nd place. Let me explain. This is the fan favourite modern day. Desmond gets out of the Animus and does multiple missions around the world. And also narrative-wise, it completes Desmond's journey that began in the first Assassin's Creed. For me, on paper, it sounds good, but in reality, it simply could have been executed better. The gameplay itself is is alright. You get to do a parkour mission in New York, a hide in plain sight with a bit of combat in Brazil, and then the Desmond going back to the Abstergo facility in Italy from the first game for a grand set piece where he lives up to his full potential. I think my main problem, away from what I've already stated, would be the lack of urgency. Nothing to reinforce the ticking clock. That is the end of the world. Sure, we know the world is about to end, but some signs showing how climactic this event will be as a warning would have gone a long way to build up the suspense and immersion. In the New York mission I mentioned earlier, imagine if satellites or some projectiles started crashing into the skyscrapers of New York's skyline, and the projectile ended up crashing into the tower Desmond was climbing, making his mission have much more urgency to get to the top before the skyscraper falls down. Seeing how this world-ending event that the team are trying to prevent is currently affecting the world and how it will get worse if they don't, would have gone a long way to build up the immersion. Now, of course, the most memorable part of this modern day is Desmond's death. Desmond stopping another great catastrophe from happening again works well on so many levels. I love the alternate timeline of Desmond not sacrificing himself, that his wisdom, knowledge, beliefs and guidance would eventually be weaponized centuries after his death, and two rival factions would be formed once again. These are themes, ideas, or simply just giving stories substance that Ubisoft have shied away from in more recent installments of the series. It's tough to say I like this ending for Desmond, knowing the clueless overarching narrative that spawned after his sacrifice. The everyman, humbled by the stories and sacrifices of his ancestors, made all the suffering worth something in the end. This was the punchline for the series. I just feel a couple of tweaks and it would have been much more satisfying. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, in my opinion, has the perfect modern day, as the modern day was more about finding the temples instead of fighting hordes of Abstergo agents. It makes more sense from a narrative perspective also, since the reason you relive a person's memory in the Animus is to find a piece of Eden, or an AC1 Templar or another artifact in the present day. Also, it makes it easier for the gameplay to not look like a reskinned version of the past sections. The team was brought together in Assassin's Creed 2, but since they've got more acquainted, they have become a well-oiled unit. This is simply the best team and dialogue in the modern day.
About bloody time.
It felt even the actors and production team had a blast with these modern day segments, and I think that really does translate to every part of these sections. Now, I guess a negative about this would be the lack of Abstergo presence. I think some agents ambushing the team at the Colosseum would have added some tension. It's not necessary, but would have been nice to see the Templars really clamping down on their top priority, obtaining the apple and retrieving Desmond's thick-ass corpse. The truth returns in Brotherhood. A bunch of conspiracy theories, puzzles, and a cutscene with what was believed to be Subject 16 at the time, but seems to be potentially retconned by Assassin's Creed Valhalla, as Desmond, searching through the calculations as the reader, maybe talking to his past self in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, trying to change the timeline. The modern day was also not mandatory for the bulk of the game, just the intro and the ending, but the rest of the time you can just stay in the Animus and collect STDs like Infinity Stones as Ezio. It felt like Assassin's Creed had finally come up with a winning formula for the modern day segments. The team had a good balance, Sean being the snarky researcher and history buff, Desmond being the field agent, Rebecca the tech guru, and Lucy the all-rounded leader. There was a great chemistry with this team, able to make light of a bleak situation they were in, and it's a shame the team didn't make it further in the series since Lucy was killed by Desmond. For me, this is what an Assassin's Creed modern day should be. A well-oiled team of underdogs with great chemistry, great character, all having their individual skill sets and tracking down artifacts together, and that's why it's my number one. And for anyone not convinced by my top pick, you must have not seen this cutscene.
Hey, what's the matter you, Altair?
That's racist.
You're a racist.
Really? This is what you guys are doing?
Oh no, God forbid I take a break. I've only spent the past 3 fucking weeks inside that machine.
No, you're right. Let's all just screw around while the world falls to pieces.
Hey, this isn't easy, you know.
Right, like we're all on vacation out here?
Enough! Look, everyone's under a lot of pressure, but we're the only ones who can stop Abstergo, so we need to keep it together.
She's right. We need to be a hive mind, people.
Anybody up for some reconciliatory yoga? Anyone?
Very funny, guys.
Thanks for watching. Let me know what your modern day ranking in the comments down below is, and I'll catch you all next time.